Welcome to the MMA Podcast, live from Las Vegas. We're here for UFC 189. I've done a lot of shows with a lot of co-hosts. Of course, we did the first 50 or so shows with Chris. We've done an innumerable amount of shows with Ramses. Had a lot of hosts from Davey Boy to Ross, Yao, Allen. I think even Jay Jeans has done a couple of shows, but this is the first time I think where the co-host isn't miles away on Skype chatting with me. The co-host is sitting right here next to him. I can touch him. I got my hand on his shoulder.
My bad shoulder.
Oh my God! I'm so sorry, dude. I'm here with Jay Jeans, who is on a world tour and actually separated or dislocated.
Just damaged my AC joint.
Yeah, the guy's got to get surgery when he gets home, and I slap my hand down on his shoulder. I apologize. You just heard his voice. We're joined here by Jay Jeans. He's on Twitter at @TheJJeans. What's going on, man?
Not much, man. I'm enjoying being out in Vegas. I'm here for the fights. I'm loving it, man.
Yeah. And I do apologize for slapping your shoulder just now. I forgot you were in some sort of a tube and you were running and stopped and the tube got in front of you. My description of it probably is leaving all the listeners wondering what the fuck I'm talking about. But just imagine a hamster running in a wheel, but instead of the wheel being static, it's actually going down a hill. And Jay fucked himself up pretty bad on.
It wasn't even that, man. It wasn't even that. It's a children's playground. I was completely sober, human hamster wheel. Me and my friend decided, right, we've got to go full speed and see what happens. And yeah, I was the one who came off worse.
Yeah, Jay is on a world tour going to Asia, Australia, and now he's in Las Vegas with me. UFC 189 International Fight Week. Going to go over to the Palms, sorry. The Cosmopolitan was in Invicta, which we were supposed to be at tonight, but for some reason Ticketmaster pulled the tickets the day of the event. I'm not sure the logic behind that. But, the Palms tomorrow, UFC Fight Expo. I went last year. It was a lot of fun, but sort of like a good movie. It's worth seeing once. I don't think I'm going to go tomorrow because it's the same fighters, and it's probably going to be very similar to last year's. But Jay is going. He should have a good time. You know where you're going to go as far as booths and autographs and pictures and all that?
Yeah, I mean, the UFC Fight Week app is pretty much posted up where people are going to be, what times they're going to be at. So hopefully I can get in the queue nice and early. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Should be interesting.
Hell yeah. Well, yeah, we're here in Vegas. I do apologize for the lack of audio quality. Usually I'm using my Yeti mic. It sounds nice and sharp and crisp. Using the laptop mic for this one because I didn't bring a checked bag or a carry-on, and nothing else was going to fit in my backpack other than a few days worth of clothes, my laptop, a couple sex toys. That's it. I can't pack anything else. And I also want to say sorry. I've the last 3 or 4 weeks, I may have done the least amount of shows in, like a 3-4 week span than I've done since we started the show 3 years ago. It's been wild times. I was in Florida for 2.5 weeks for a lot of things. Father's Day, my mom's birthday, my cousin's wedding, doing orientation at the school I'm going to be going to starting this fall. And then I was home for a week, packing all my shit up. Now I'm in Vegas, but we're doing the show. We're live in Las Vegas. This is my 5th trip to Vegas since we started the show. I came for UFC 167, 175, 182, 187. And I've always said, yeah, we might do a show in Vegas. And I never really get around to it because I'm either drinking heavily or out doing shit. But we have 6 nights in Vegas. It's Thursday night, not a giant list of things going on Thursday. We'll probably be pretty busy Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. But we got a little bit of time, so we thought, let's do a podcast. Let's break down UFC 189. This Saturday, of course, at the MGM Grand Garden Arena. I tweeted that we would be live from the MGM. We're at the Hooters, so close enough. I mean, it's within a quarter mile, so...
it's within touching distance.
Yeah,
so.
basically. We went downstairs and tried to order 50 wings last night. I was ballsy, man. I'm like, you know what? My over-under is 14, 15 wings. I'm going to fucking kill it. And I don't know, Jay emasculated me hardcore because I got to 10 wings, and I don't know if it was the breading in the wings. I don't know if it was all the beers I'd slugged down in the room before we went to go eat the wings. But I hit a wall at 7. How fucking pussy is that? I hit a wall at 7 wings, and I did all I could to power through to 10. Jay, you had 18?
18 and a half. I dropped one on the floor.
and our slender Asian waitress is like, oh yeah, I could kill like 18 easy. Making me feel like a giant pussy. We were in the bar. I don't want to name names, but a pretty well-known MMA journalist walked in with his friends, and they were annoying as shit, doing the Connor lines over and over. They can't fight like I fight. They can't sit like I sit. They can't order like I order. It was annoying as fuck, and I'll leave it at that. They were being loud as hell, but you know what? It's a bar. It's fight week. I shouldn't be mad at some MMA reporters and Irishmen getting loud as shit. What else have we done? We went to the Miracle Mile, checked out the Las Vegas Fight Shop. They've got a lot of cool fight stuff. Shout out to them. I think they're on Twitter at LV Fight Shop. Played a little video roulette at Planet Hollywood. We're going to get some in and out after this podcast. Tomorrow will be a packed day. The expo, the weigh-ins, and that is a beer you hear cracking. It is Vegas. We are drinking it up. Drinking Jay is drinking a Coors Original, the banquet beer, brewed in Golden, Colorado. But enough of the shenanigans we're getting into in Vegas. Let's talk about UFC 189. Before we break down the card fight by fight, I want to talk about a couple things relating to the card. The first one being the UFC fight kit. They rolled it out, I guess, about a week and a half ago. And it's this new thing the UFC is going after. Every UFC up to this date, we've seen fighters walk out with customized fighter shirts with their own sponsors. Shorts, whether they're bad boy shorts, Venom shorts in the case of Cody McKenzie, athletic shorts they bought at a Walmart an hour before the fight because they forgot to pack shorts.
Don't forget Mac Danzig's as well. This space is not for sale.
Don't forget Dennis Hallman, a.k.a. Penis Ballman, wearing the Speedo. Now everyone's going to be wearing the same shit, basically. The same exact shorts and the same shirt with their name on it. And honestly, I mean, taking my opinions out of it, which I didn't like it at all. The fight kit rollout seemed like an absolute disaster. Everyone I saw who was talking about it hated it, but that's not the most criticized aspect of it. Basically, the fight kit is a t-shirt. I think it's like a dry fit tee with a fighter's name on it, on the back. And it says UFC on the front. And they're charging $100 a shirt. I don't know if they think UFC fans are stupid, if they think UFC fans are just full of money, like they spend $1,000 a year on pay-per-views, so dropping $100 on a shirt is nothing. But yeah, I did not think the fight kit, just the whole concept of, oh yeah, I have 4 fighters I really like, so what, am I going to go out and drop $400 on their fight kits? No, that's fucking ludicrous.
Give it 2 years and they'll be irrelevant anyway. You know how the game works.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how sales do, because I think a big part of the fight kit was Dana White and Lorenzo sees the amount of money other sports make as far as, baseball, hockey, basketball. They all make a lot of money on jerseys, and I think this is the UFC trying to get a piece of that pie and not realizing that the whole point of jerseys, the whole reason people want to buy a number 18 Peyton Manning jersey or a number 2 Derek Jeter jersey, that's what they wear during the game. Dana, the fighters are going to take the shirt off before the fight. They don't actually wear it during the fight, so it seems pointless. It seems really stupid.
Plus, right, you consider, right, in American football, baseball, every other sport out there, if your star is wearing the shirt, they're wearing it for 40 minutes, at least 40 minutes, and most sports I can think of, they're wearing it weekend in and out. I mean, the best we've got is Donald Cerrone, who will wear that thing maybe 5 times a year.
Yeah.
If you buy a Cain Velasquez shirt because he's your favourite fighter, you're wearing that thing about once every 18 months. Like, what is the point of that? Like, you've got to have more than one favourite, you've got to buy more than one shirt. It just doesn't work the same. It's not a jersey.
It's not a jersey, and, it was sort of cool to buy a walkout shirt, whether it was, Penn's Hawaii shirt or Chael's, shirt where it'll have a cool saying on the front. These just lack personality. They lack a lot of things, and they're trying to sell them for $100 a piece. I feel like this is going to be one of the biggest failures ever in MMA marketing. And of course, Dana saying, oh, well, I'm only doing this because the fighters love the Reebok deal. And I hate that I have to talk so much shit about Dana and Lorenzo and Zuffa in the UFC so much recently. But man, fucking 2 or 3 years ago, I feel like they were making all the right moves. I was cheering them on when they bought Strikeforce. I was cheering them on when they signed that deal with Fox. But everything lately, just, taking sponsors away from fighters and giving them chump change for the Reebok deal, and just not admitting that, Dana, just say nothing. Don't tell us that you're only doing this looking out for the fighters, because it makes us think you think we're stupid. And this obviously is not for the fighters. This is for the UFC. And I get it, man. You're running a business. Your job is to make money for that business. But don't go on fucking national interviews saying that, oh yeah, this is for the fighters and we're doing it for them, because that's just very, very transparently not true. Enough about bashing Dana and the UFC and all that.
There's a lot you could do. There's a lot of things you could bash him on right now.
Yeah, and I've probably bashed him on all of those things in prior shows. Dana, I might talk a little shit about him now and then, and he might be a billionaire, but I felt so bad for Dana White about 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks, a week between there, when Jose Aldo announced that he would be backing out of UFC 189. It was, God. Painful. They had done all this promotion. They'd done a world tour months ago with Conor and Jose. You had the iconic moment in Dublin where Conor takes the belt away from Aldo, and Aldo freaks out. And Dana is like keeping Aldo off Conor while Conor's screaming at the crowd, "Ada!" and holding the belt up. Fucking crazy. But Aldo backing out, man. I don't know. I have very mixed feelings on this. I feel like Dana, talk about him being, what is the word? Just lying. I mean, he came out and said that Jose Aldo didn't break his rib. It was a bruised rib. And a few days later, when Aldo officially backed out, his trainer, Andre Pederneiras, tweeted a picture of an x-ray of Aldo that clearly showed he had a fractured rib. So do you think Dana just, I don't know, got 6 doctors to all look at him and all 6 of them were wrong? Or do you think he was trying trying to spin it to make Jose look bad if he had to back out. I think it's the latter, man. But also, Aldo, man, you've been booked for 12 fights and you've backed out of 5. What kind of batting percentage is that? I don't know what job you can show up for 60% of the time.
It's a solid reminder. I mean, people like Ramses in particular, the word on the street and all that, he loves to say this game, there's a lot of rigged and fixed fights, as if Dana would want anybody to back out a fight after he's paid $1 million to step in. I mean, it's insane.
It is insane. I thought the answer to all of this was going to be that I thought that if they offered Aldo a rematch clause and said, if you lose, you can get another crack at the belt, I thought that would fix it all, because it would take away Aldo, I don't know if fear is the right word, but it would let him know that even if you lose, you get another shot at him 100%. I don't know. He's missing out on a big payday. He would have gotten a cut of the pay-per-view, gotten millions and
$4 million.
Millions of dollars. Yeah, well, Dana put it at 4, and I don't know how much we can trust Dana.
It's probably about 10 grand.
Yeah, right. But he would have made millions, and instead he decided, I guess, his legacy wasn't worth it. We got Conor McGregor and Chad Mendes fighting for an interim belt, and we will break that fight down. But I guess we're about 16 minutes in. Let's get to breaking down the card, UFC 189. Let's start with the UFC Fight Pass prelims. We have 2 fights on the Fight Pass card. Yodinis Cedeno, who's 1-2 in his last 3, taking on Cody Pfister, who just lost in his UFC debut back in February against James Moonwalker Moonsari. We also have 2, I won't even try and pump it up, 2 middling flyweights who have 0 chance of fighting for the belt anytime soon. Louis Smolka taking on Neil Seery. Vegas has Cedeno as a moderate favorite, while Smolka and Seery is just about even. I think both guys are around -110 for that fight. Seery winning 2 straight fights against Phil Harris and Chris Beal since losing to Brad Pickett back at that Gustafsson-Manoa card. And Luis Smolka losing a split decision to Chris Carriot, so getting back in the win column against Richie Vakulik last November. I'm not saying these fights are going to be terrible, but I am saying if you don't switch on UFC 189 until the Fox Sports 1 card, I don't blame you. I'm not terribly interested in either fight. I guess I have Cedeno, and I'll pick Smolka too, just as a coin flip. Not really too married to watching either of these fights. I might miss them in person. I don't know. Jay, what do you think about this lightweight and flyweight match?
Let's not forget Cody trains out of one of the best camps in the world. I mean, I think the name is something like Nick's Fight Camp.
Yeah, Nick's Fight Camp.
What a solid name. I mean, that's up there with TriStar, the Black Zillions. That's up there in all the best ones. I mean, it's probably even close to the Baltimore Kickboxing Academy.
Belmore,
that's the one. But as for the other fight, I mean, Neil Seery versus Smolka, I really actually am looking forward to. Smolka's coming off the Sweet Chin Music KO, and Neil Seery, although he's one of those scrappy guys, his record looks terrible. I think he's like 14-10, something like that. But yeah, Smolka, you said these guys won't fight for a title. The division's still really shallow. I could see Smolka in a few years. I think when he made his debut, he might have only been like 19 or 21, something around that sort of young age. He has a chance, man. I wouldn't discredit him. I mean, how old is he?
He is 8-1, currently only 23 years old.
So he made his debut probably when he was around 20.
When he was 20, made his MMA debut when he was 20. Made his UFC debut January 2014 at the ripe age of 22.
And his only loss is a split decision one, and he beat Alp. Alp was a veteran when he debuted. He's got a chance. I think your statement earlier about him never fighting for a title, he's got a shot.
I didn't say never. I said no time soon.
Yeah, could be true. If he keeps on sweet chin music and people are going to get a reputation for Shawn Michaels.
Carriasso actually got a title shot after beating Smolka in a split decision.
That's what it takes, man. Smolka's a machine.
Yeah, right. So, both of these fights, I mean, if you're an MMA hardcore, watch them, I guess. Like I said, though, if you miss them, I'm not going to beat you up too bad. Let's get to the prelims. Cody Garbrandt, I think he is either he's the biggest favorite of the night or Thomas Almeida is. Either way, they're both huge favorites. Garbrandt, a really bright, up-and-coming name in MMA. He's 24. He's undefeated, 6-0. Made his debut at UFC 182 against Marcus Brimage, a fight where he stopped Brimage, taking on Enrique Briones, whose nickname is Henry Burr. It's a weird nickname. I've never heard a nickname just being another name. That would be my nickname being like George Williams or something. It doesn't make any sense. Maybe that's like a famous person over in Mexico and Baja California, where he's from. Regardless, Garbrandt, a huge favorite, even though Briones has not lost a fight in his last 8. He made his UFC debut last November against Guido Canetti, where he won in the second round via submission. But Cody is one of these alpha male guys. And, man, training with guys like Faber, Mendez, Dillashaw, Feely, just a ton of talent there, and I think Cody will have a huge edge. Not to mention, homie is fucking Paige Van Zandt. Come on, I have Cody winning very easily here.
I'm pretty much the exact same. I mean, the only question I have about this fight is how much has Kobe started training for this fight? Because I know the Marcus Brimage fight was actually, I remember it to be closer than most people thought. And of course, you have Henry, whatever the hell, how many nicknames you want to give a guy.
Henry Burr.
I'm assuming he came out of the Ultimate Fight in Mexico. I can't remember that off by heart, but of course, Kobe's going to win it. It's one of those underdog fights for a reason. I mean, the Almeida fight, I believe, is closer, but not in terms of the Vegas odds.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens. That fight is the first card on the Fox Sports 1 prelims. Moving on, the second fight, an interesting fight. It's funny, the Fox Sports 1 prelims start with a bantamweight fight, and the rest of the card, the other 3 fights are all at the same weight class, all at welterweight, 170 pounds. We got John Howard taking on Cathal Pendred, which, I don't know, I think it's a good fight to make, but both fighters are on much different trajectories. Cathal joined the UFC back almost a year ago to the day, July 19th, 2014. Has fought 4 times, won all 4. Subbed out Mike King, and then got decision wins against Gaston Umalatov, Sean Spencer, and Augusto Montario. Taking on John Howard, who's lost his last 3. Howard, though, has faced much, much tougher competition. He beat Uriah Hall in his UFC debut, beat C.R. Bahadurzada very, very swiftly at UFC 168, going back down to 170. But since then, he's faced Ryan LaFleur, Brian Ebersol, and Lorenz Larkin. All of those, though, are very good names. Ryan is, one of the bright MMA prospects at welterweight. Brian Ebersol, you could call him a gatekeeper to being a top welterweight, a very underrated fighter. And Lorenz Larkin finished him back in January. But I don't know if you really can hold that too much against him either. Larkin had another recent knockout just a week or two ago at UFC Florida. Absolutely just murdered. I think he was fighting Sergio Ponzinibbio, if that makes sense. Yeah. He fucking brutal KO. So this is a guy who's on a losing streak, but has faced much better fighters, and a guy on a win streak who is facing his toughest opponent yet in John Howard. I don't know. I think I'm going Howard here. What about you?
I think you're right. I think Howard. I think it's Vegas' closest fight in the card, but I think it should be Howard's to win. I mean, we've got Vital Pendred, who's kind of a European wrestler, which is something we rarely ever see. He beat Mike King, but he barely won that fight. He beat Gazan Umalatov, and he barely won that fight. Yeah, he's starting to put it together, but who's he putting it together against? Howard's got the leg kicks, which is a good way to neutralize a wrestler.
Yeah.
He's got a good clinch game. Howard himself, he started wrestling against CR. And I can't remember some of the other names you mentioned, but I think he tried to wrestle against LaFleur, and it didn't really benefit him. So, yeah, I think it's Howard's definitely to win, but Howard feels like he's on the way out. He's only 32 years old, but he doesn't look as fresh as he used to be. I still think, it's Howard's to win. I don't think it's as close as the Vegas odds make it, but if Vital can push him up the cage, especially with Vital being, it's on the Irish fight card. You've got Siri, you've got Vital Pendred, you've got Pickett, although he trains at AT&T, I think. And then you've got Connor. It's his chance to win. But I think it's a reason why it's a close fight. I'm going to have to go with Howard, but I'd love to see Vital wall and stool, baby.
I think it's going to come down to whether Howard can drag him into deep water and make him feel uncomfortable. The guys he's gotten, Umalatov, Spencer, Augusto Monterio, they're all decent, but they don't have the ability like Howard does to really wear out Cahal, drag him into deep water, and sort of test, what you do when you're out of gas, sort of like we saw in Kane versus Verdum. What are you going to do when you run out of gas? Are you going to keep your IQ, or are you going to fall apart? If Howard can drag Pendred into deep water, I think he gets the win. Yeah, both guys, dead even odds in Vegas, minus 110. Moving on, Mike Swick versus Alex Garcia. Mike Swick has had a great UFC career. Going back to WEC 4 was a part of that tough one group. Fucking had fights in the UFC over a decade ago. Not many fighters can say that. That being said, he's 1-3 in his last 4. He lost to Dan Hardy. He lost to Paulo Thiago. He beat DeMarcus Johnson, and then his loss to Matt Brown. His last fight was 2.5 years ago. He went to Thailand, opened up ATT Phuket, and has been, it seems like, focusing a lot more on running a gym than fighting. I don't know whether he wanted to sort of right the ship and make his last fight a win, but a guy who hasn't fought in 2.5 years is going to have major ring rust, and even if he is technically sound, is going to face a lot of challenges like a guy, and Alex Garcia, who might not be the most technical fighter, but is just a freak as far as strength and athleticism. Since joining the UFC, he's 2-1. He beat Benoit and Sean Spencer before losing to Neil Magny, which, God, he's a whole different talking point. I think Neil Magny is literally going to have to win 20 straight fights before he gets a title shot. They're moving him up the ladder so slowly. But, this is a fight where Swick, I wish he could retire with a win, but Vegas sees it very, very weighted toward Alex Garcia. Garcia minus 420 favorite over Swick, who's plus 340. And, a guy who's getting older. He hasn't fought in 2.5 years. He's 36, and he's 1-3 in his last 4. I don't know. I see maybe a sub victory, even though he only has a few of those in his career. Maybe he can catch him just because he's got a lot more experience. But all signs here are pointing to a win for the Dominican Nightmare, the 27-year-old Alex Garcia.
I mean, I've never heard of this Alex Garcia guy. I think I've caught his fights.
Trains at TriStar.
Yeah, I mean, I must have seen his fights because there's barely been. There's not that many events I've missed.
Yeah.
But I mean, Mike Swick, his losses. You think about Dan Hardy back in 2009. That was when he was on fire. Paulo Thiago back in 2010. That was again Paulo Thiago's coming out party. Matt Brown in 2012, 2013 is the time you did not want to mess with Matt Brown. Mike Swick's losses are very variable. These are guys who probably were in the prime of their career when he lost them. That said, I just don't think Mike Swick's got it. I mean, even in those losses, he looked like every single place he tried to win that fight, he lost it. And these aren't guys who have... he tried to take Matt Brown. That didn't work for him. He lost the clinch game against Dan Hardy.
Yeah.
I mean, everywhere he's good, he's been beaten. Everywhere he's bad, he's been beaten by guys who are also bad in those areas. I don't know who this Alex Garcia is, but if anybody else is confident in him, then so am I. Alex Garcia to get the finish, probably. I mean, Mike Swick, as you said, 36 years old, he's getting on, and he's not looked on fire. 2.5 years ring rust for a guy who's 36? Screw that.
Yeah, to put it in perspective, the last time Mike Swick won on a pay-per-view, which even since then, he only has one win. His last pay-per-view win was UFC 99. We were still in the double digits of UFC pay-per-views. This is UFC 189. We've had 90 pay-per-views since Mike Swick won on a pay-per-view. And, Swick for a while was a UFC darling. I think he had a video blog on UFC.com, like Quick Swick's Picks or some shit. He was that, part of that triumvirate at, I believe, AKA. It was him, John Fitch, and Josh Koscheck, and they were sort of the guys over at AKA. And it's funny how things have changed so much. The AKA guys used to be Swick, Koscheck, and Fitch, and now, I mean, they're all pretty much irrelevant, where now we have, Kane, Cormier, Rockhold, Nurmagomedov. It's funny how things can change so drastically. We'll segue. Swick's last fight was a KO loss against Matt Brown, and Matt Brown will be fighting in the fight following Swick versus Garcia. Talk about guys on different trajectories. Pardon me. We have Brown. He's lost his last 2. But there's a huge asterisk there, which is he's lost his last 2 fights to maybe the best 2 welterweights in the UFC, losing them both via decision, losing to Robbie Lawler back about a year ago, and then Johnny Hendricks, I guess, about 4 months ago. Lawler and Hendricks being, guys who have fought for the title twice, Tim means 4 straight wins, but wins against, I don't want to straight up call them bums, but let's be honest here. Since losing to Neil Magny back about a year and a few months ago. He beat Hernani Perpetual, Marcio Alexandre, Diego Lima, and George Sullivan. I couldn't tell you much about any of those four guys. So we have a guy on a 4-fight winning streak who's just been crushing a bunch of cans. We have a guy in Matt Brown who's on a losing streak, but his losses are to two of the most impressive fighters in the UFC, not just that weight class, but the entire UFC. And I think this is a prime example of the UFC sort of wanting to get Matt Brown back in the win column. And I wouldn't call it as it's not that they hate Tim Means by wanting to get them in the loss column, but let's be honest, this fight favors Matt Brown a ton. Means' whole style is standing up and trading, and the last guy you want to stand. I mean, if the UFC was all about standing up and trading, Matt Brown might be a fucking UFC champion. And I think Brown finishes it in the first round. Somehow in Vegas, he's only minus 170. I think I'm going to bet maybe $20 on Brown just because the guy, I don't see many ways he loses this fight, and he's only minus 170, which is crazy. Tim, the Dirty Bird Means, has a lot of fans. You know, those last two wins, too, this past February and April, both finishes. A really impressive TKO against Diego Lima, and then the arm triangle choke against George Sullivan. But Lima, Sullivan, they can't hold a candle to Matt Brown, and I think Brown finishes him quickly and decisively.
Yeah, Tim Means, you mentioned he's got the 4 fights. Diego Lima's the only name I even recognise as a result of tough.
And that's only because of his brother.
No, even that. He was a finalist on the Ultimate Fighter 19, so he made it that far. But yeah, you're completely right. The only way he loses this fight is if he stands in Tim Means' range. And Matt Brown recently, the way he got that far was standing in nice and tight with people, landing the elbows, landing the nice uppercuts and the short hooks, as if he's going to let Tim Means, stand on the outside and land the big swinging, brawling style hooks that he likes to land.
Yeah.
It's just not happening. Like, this is Brown's to win. Brown is going to get up front, get nice and confrontational, maybe even try and clinch up and land some knees. Tim Means has not got a chance in this fight, I'm afraid. I'm surprised the Vegas odds have it so close. I mean, you're putting $20 on it. I know that I'm putting Brown in pretty much all the parlays I'm making. This is an easy fight. I don't know how the odds are that close. Who's putting money on the Dirty Bird? That's the question.
Yeah, Means a little bit younger, a little bit taller, but that's about all he has going for him in this fight. I have Brown with an easy KO or TKO victory here. Moving on to the main card, which will start at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. We start with, I like Brad, one punch Pickett, but it seems like they are just serving him up to red-hot prospect Thomas Almeida, 2-0 since joining the UFC, 19-0 overall. His last win just a few months ago at UFC 186 against Yves the Tiger Jabouin, a first-round knockout that earned him $50K. He's earned $50K in both of his UFC fights. He's young as shit. He's 23 years old, and the guy is already 19-0. Fought something crazy like 8 or 9 times in 2012. Fought 5 times in 2013. And decent groups like Legacy FC fought a little bit in Brazil, but since joining the UFC, he's looked red hot. And Pickett once was a bright star. The guy has a win against maybe the pound for pound king, Demetrius Johnson. Only 2 guys can say that: Dominic Cruz, who himself was once a pound for pound king, and Brad Pickett, who beat Johnson at WEC 48. You look at his losses, and all of his losses have come to very good fighters. You got Barrow, you got Wineland, McDonald, Ian McCall. His last fight was a split decision against Chico Camus, and I just think, age is starting to show a bit. He's 36. This is a fight where, I don't know, Pickett is a huge underdog, and I might throw a buck or two on him just because he is a wily vet, and they call him One Punch for a reason. He has a very good punching power. But let's be serious. Thomas Almeida just beat out Yves Jabouin, who spent a good amount of his career at featherweight. This is going to be a fight at 135, and a fight that I think is Thomas Almeida's to lose.
I'm kind of indecisive about this fight, and I'm quite surprised the Vegas odds have it that.
I think Pickett's like plus 700.
Pickett's, Almeida's minus 7,000 on some sites.
Oh, yeah, Pickett is plus 650. Almeida's minus 1,000.
There you are. This is an interesting one. Pickett got the reputation and he got the fame as a British guy because he was one of the best British wrestlers we got out there. I mean, the way he beat Demetrius Johnson was he flat out wrestled him. He got huge slams on him and stuff. And Almeida, of course, himself is a striker. He got the nickname One Punch almost because he was setting up the wrestling so much. Guys started lowering their hands, started lowering their base, sticking their head up a bit more, and then he's able to land this big one punch, and that's it, it's game over. This is almost Pickett's ideal stylistical matchup, but at the age of 36, that's why the odds makers have it down. I mean, losses to Chico Camus, that should have been an easy one to win. This is his coming back to bantamweight, and this could be his. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if anybody throws a few dollars on this one. I will be myself, putting some money on Pickett. They seem to be completely underestimating him in this one. But Almeida is a prospect and he's a huge future. There's nothing wrong with a wrestling loss to your record. It teaches you a lot.
Thomas Almeida, 19 wins, 18 finishes. The guy has a knack to finish fights. But he hasn't really fought that top caliber of fighters. And Pickett, for sure, has a lot more experience fighting elite guys than the young 23-year-old undefeated Brazilian. This will really launch whoever wins way up. If Pickett wins, he beat this red-hot prospect and will probably take on a very good fighter at 135. If Almeida wins, he beats a proven guy. I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see who takes it, how it's won. But I do agree with Vegas that I'm almost sure it will be the Brazilian Thomas Almeida. Moving on, we have a fight at welterweight. Another two very young guys, bright prospects. The 23-year-old Gunnar Nelson taking on the 29-year-old Brandon Thatch. Thatch looked unstoppable after his first two fights in the UFC, where he beat both Justin Edwards and Paulo Thiago in the first round. That came to an end when he got matched up against Benson Henderson. Man, I don't know. He was supposed to originally fight Stephen Thompson, and that would have been a barn burner. Two guys who love to strike. I think Thatch would have won that fight, but Thompson gets pulled toward, just a few days before the fight, I think like 2 weeks, replaced with 4 or 5-time UFC champion Benson Henderson, who just is wily, man. That guy is so wily. His striking, his ground game, he might not be able to beat everyone he fights, but he can keep up with just about everyone he fights. And Bindo dragged him into deep waters, and he lost a very one-sided fight in the 4th round via rear naked choke. Benson, it seemed like sort of sat back in those first 2 rounds and let Thatch just burn himself out. And then in the third round, peppered him up. And in the fourth round, seeing his gas tank was just about empty, subbed him out. I think it was Thatch's first 5-round fight. I think he had finished every fight in the first round except for his one loss, which was a split decision loss. And Benson knew exactly what to do. You have Gunnar Nelson, who didn't have a loss until his last fight this past October against Rick Story. Kind of the same fight, Story sort of sat back a little bit, and then when his gas tank was getting low, just wrestled the shit out of him, peppered the shit out of him, and Gunnar lost a split decision. I was sort of surprised it was a split because I thought Story won. It was a pretty, obvious Story win, but the right guy won. Story won. So both of these guys are guys who were on tremendous winning streaks and sort of got humbled a little bit by Rick Story and Bendo. And now we get to see which guy will be on a losing streak and which guy can get himself back into the win column.
It's a good fight. It's a solid fight. I'm pretty much going with Nelson only as a result of the fact he's pretty much European anyway. I'm a huge fan of Iceland. It's still probably my favourite country I've been to, so I'm a bit biased in that front.
Well, USA, man.
Yeah, but I'm going with Nelson on this one. I don't really see how it's going to play out. It's going to be one of these fights where you try and play it out in your head, but you have absolutely no idea. If Thatch is aggressive, it might play into Nelson's karate base. I seriously can't pick this one. I might end up putting some money on Nelson just because he is the underdog, and I feel that the underdog in this fight might have something a bit more to prove. But it's going to be a barn burner. I'm a huge fan of Thatch. I was a huge fan of Nelson when he started coming through. But yeah, I'm going to have to go with Nelson on this one. Sorry, it's only a quick analysis, man. I don't have much to say.
Taking Gunnar with the European bias. I'll take Brandon Thatch with the Colorado bias. Thatch, man, Gunnar better, this is what it's going to come down to. Can Gunnar take the fight to the mat? If he can take the fight to the mat, he'll win. If he can't get Thatch down, if Thatch can keep the fight standing up, he's going to knock the shit out of him. It is a ground fighter against a stand-up fighter. And wherever the fight takes place, the fight will be won. And all fights start on the feet. So we'll see whether Gunnar will be able to dictate where the fight takes place.
You don't have confidence in Nelson's karate then?
Not against Thatch. I mean, Gunnar could maybe strike with some of the welterweights in the UFC, but I mean, George St. Pierre was bringing Thatch in to what is the word I'm looking for? Spar with. Thatch is leagues past Gunnar standing up, just like Gunnar is leagues past Thatch on the ground. So this is a very this will be very fun to watch because standing up one fighter is just way out of the other's league, and on the ground it's vice versa. So it'll be cool to see if Gunnar can bring it to the ground, and if he can't, this is all Thatch. Gunnar does not stand a chance against Thatch standing up. Moving on, we get a fight at featherweight between Dennis Bermudez and Jeremy Stephens. Dennis, the favorite, was on a 7-fight losing streak before losing to Ricardo Lamas in Mexico City. It was a pretty one-sided fight as Lamas choked him out 3 minutes into the fight. Jeremy Stephens has also lost his last fight to Charles Oliveira. He lost the fight before that, too, to Cub Swanson. Both of those unanimous decision losses. Charles, Cub, Lamas, they're all very good fighters, and both of these guys probably deserve to be in the top 10. I'm picking Dennis Bermudez here. He's got that wrestling. He has decent stand-up. but he better hope that Stevens doesn't hit him with one of those strong punches, one of those kicks, because Stevens is one of these guys who is an underdog a lot, but you can never count him out of a fight. I mean, he's had a lot. I mean, the guy KO'd the current lightweight champ at UFC 91, Rafael Dos Anjos. That being said, I still give the fight to the guy who's 7-1 in his last 8. I'm giving it to Dennis the Menace Bermudez.
I just think with this fight, I mean, how good is Bermudez's chin? That's my biggest question. We had that rock'em sock'em fight against Diogo Brandao. He was dropped by Ricardo Lamas, and you think about Lamas, you don't really think of him as a striker. I mean, he was horribly showcased against Aldo, horribly showcased against Mendes, and then he goes and drops. And then he goes and drops a guy like Bermudez. I mean, who the hell is Bermudez, man? Also, Bermudez struggled with guys like Seiler to put them away. He did a good job against Holloway. His wrestling's there. But Stevens has seen it all. He's been in the game such a long time.
He's been around a long time.
Yeah, he's been doing this a long time, that's for sure. I think it's Stevens' fight to win, really. That's how I view it. Again, I'm going against the Vegas odds. I feel like there's a lot of underdogs in this card, or maybe I'm just thinking that these fights are closer than they actually are, but maybe I know worse. I mean, I haven't been making my picks recently. Maybe I'm out of the game a bit, but we'll see. This is another fight whereby it's going to be contested in the octagon. It's going to be contested whether Bermudez tries to wrestle it or whether he tries to stand with him. But Bermudez is a crafty vet. He knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm picking Dennis, but I think Stevens, I think he's plus 175 or something. I think that line might be worth putting a little action on him. So, it'll be fun to see Dennis Bermudez taking on Jeremy Stevens. Stevens, a guy who's been doing this a long time. You want to talk about guys who have been doing this a long time. Robbie Lawler, Jesus Christ, he made his UFC debut back in 2002 at UFC 37. He's 33 years old, and he's taken on the 25-year-old Rory McDonald. Made his debut 8 years after Lawler in 2010, and since then the guy has been on a roll. He's 9-2. His only losses to Carlos Condit when he was still only 20 years old, basically a baby in MMA. And the other loss to Robbie Lawler. We're going to get a rematch, UFC 167, the same card that was GSP's last fight, Chael Sonnen's last fight, Rashad Evans' last fight to date. It probably won't be his last fight as he was recently slotted into, I think, UFC 192 against Ryan Bader. Lawler, McDonald 2. This is one of the very few fights you'll see where the current champion is an underdog. Folks saying that Rory has progressed his game enough to where he's going to beat Lawler. I don't know about that. You know, Lawler, I don't know how people sleep on Lawler so much. Is Rory a tremendous fighter? Yes, but Lawler is on this run. If you watch the end of that fight against Johnny in the 5th round, where he was one of the scariest things I've seen. He was coming at Johnny like a bat out of hell, and I think Vegas is giving Robbie no love here. You know, he's more than I think he's the better striker than Rory. Rory might be a more multifaceted striker as far as being able to incorporate kicks and elbows, but Robbie defensively is just so good, and that boxing is near perfect. Just the way he can break a guy down standing. You know, Lawler, this guy who shit back in 2012, about 3 years ago, looked like his career was near over. He was 3-5 in 8 fights. losing to Tim Kennedy, losing to Renato Sobral, Lorenz Larkin. Since then, he has rolled out a 6-1 record in the UFC. The only loss in a championship fight to Johnny Hendricks at UFC 171. This is, Rory is the second best guy he's fought recently. Second to Johnny, I think. I don't know. Rory's young. I think he'll eventually be the champion, but I don't think Saturday night's the night.
Back in 2010, Robbie Lawler was the man to say against Malvin Manhoef.
Yeah.
I've been doing this a long time. 5 years later, he's got a UFC belt wrapped around his waist, and he's still been doing this a long time. This is a hell of a fight, though. This is a rematch that really, you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, Rory McDonald, I attended the the open workouts.
Yeah.
Rory didn't look like himself. He only showed up for 2 minutes. He didn't look as big as I've heard people describe him as. When he came into the BJ Penn fight, he looked like a light heavyweight.
He was a monster then.
He looked like a small middleweight at the open workout. I don't know why that is. Is he trying to work more on speed? I don't have a clue what
Maybe
Rory's
he's
thinking.
trained a lot more on technique than his strength and conditioning, based on the fact that Robbie just out-techniqued him at UFC 167.
My favourite quote about that, since we started to get more of the press and stuff, is Rory said, I wasn't hungry in the last fight. That's lies. You got cracked in the face.
Should have eaten then.
Yeah. But he got cracked in the face within about the first minute and a half in that fight. And for at least 2 minutes after that, he didn't know where he was. You can't deny things like that. Lawler has the power to put guys on Queer Street. And yeah, I think that this is Lawler's fight to win. I really, really want to see him do it. I want to see him send a message to the rest of the division. Rory's a guy who can knock out, and I think if he puts it all together, he will. I don't know what Rory's game plan is, but if it's something related to speed or technique or to go 25 minutes, Lawler's going to be aggressive and whitewash you. You need to match him move for move, and I just don't see how he's going to do that. Let's hope Lawler wins it. Can't stand Rory myself. I think he's got about as much personality as a block of cheese. And Lawler, although he's monotone as hell, I'm just glad to see the resurgence that's taken place in his career.
Yeah, this is one of the most feel-good stories, if you want to call it that, in the UFC. I mean,
Arlovsky's probably getting up there now.
Yeah, he fucking is.
And Tito Ortiz, I mean, outside of the UFC.
Bellator champion.
Close.
I don't know if Bellator champion really holds that much weight when they're making main events like Kimbo against fucking
Let's just take a step back. Let's not call it Bellator because it is becoming a joke, but if we call it the second best promotion in MMA right now, that's where you say Tito Ortiz he's one fight away from being a world champion and the second best non-UFC promotion.
That's so sad that they're the second best. I mean, I wish World Series of Fighting or RFA could step their game up. But
after they lost Rumble and AA, though, it's game over.
It's going to be really cool when we see more and more UFC guys like Phil Davis and Josh Koscheck start to fight for him. But until then, Bellator, you're a joke for making Kimbo against fucking Ken Shamrock. Get the fuck out of here. Let's get to the main event. Chad Mendes slotted in for Jose Aldo taking on Conor McGregor. This is going to be a fun fight. It took me about a solid week to get over Aldo not being in the fight. I was sad. I was pissed off. I wanted to see Aldo McGregor so bad. There was so much bad blood. They did a goddamn world tour. But now that that's sort of gone away, I'm starting to get really pumped for this fight. It's Conor, who's 5-0 since joining the UFC, but his one big sort of hang-up that a lot of fans had called out was that Zuffa has kind of shielded him from fighting wrestlers. Chad Mendes is not just a wrestler, he's one of the best 2 or 3 wrestlers at 145. And I think this strategy of the UFC of sort of shielding Conor from wrestlers might backfire, because you give him an okay wrestler, then give him a little bit better wrestler, then give him a good wrestler. It would have prepared him much better, instead of shielding him from ever fighting a wrestler until he takes on one of the best the UFC has in Chad Mendes. You look at both of these guys' record. Conor hardly ever loses. His last fight was ages ago when he was a prospect in Ireland to Joseph Duffy. Chad Mendes, his entire career, has only lost to one guy, Jose Aldo. One of the fights he lost via an illegal knee, where Aldo grabbed the cage and used it to turn himself around to knee Chad. The other one at UFC 179 was probably the fight of the year last year. It was a barn burner. Mendes can go toe-to-toe with anyone. Conor is maybe the MMA's, new Chael Sonnen. Everyone wants a piece of him. He's on SportsCenter. He's on Conan O'Brien. He's really done an amazing job at making a name for himself. And I think Conor and Chael are in a league of their own as far as shit talking and selling and promoting a fight. That being said, I think Chad wins. I'm going to be rooting for Conor, but I think Chad wins. Conor, we've never seen a guy try and take him down. We've never seen a real wrestler go for the takedown, and that's for a reason. That's because the UFC wanted him to win these fights, and I think when Chad shoots in, Conor is not going to have any answers. Conor's going to be on his back for a good amount of this fight, and I think Chad Mendes walks away the winner. Dana, Conor, Lorenzo, they're all going to be heartbroken. I honestly think Conor would have beaten Aldo. I think that stylistically is a much better matchup. But Chad Mendes is Conor McGregor's worst nightmare, and I think we see Chad with the interim strap when it's all said and done.
I don't think he's the worst nightmare. I think Frankie Edgar is the number one in the division outside Aldo, but I've got to agree with you. It's a bad fight for McGregor. We don't know what his skill set is in terms of wrestling. I mean, I've heard things from Eddie Bravo and Joe Rogan about his jiu-jitsu, but I don't know. These days, jiu-jitsu and getting a submission in championship fights just feels rare. I mean, we saw it in Pettis versus Benson. But before that, when Kane versus Verdun, but before that we had a huge drought. I think I checked it up once, and it was like 3 years where a champion hadn't lost a belt via submission. Like, you hit a level in mixed martial arts where you can feel when a submission's taken place, and I think Chad Mendes probably is on that level. He is only a white belt, but I mean, training at Alpha Male, you're not going to be able to guillotine him. I doubt any chokes are going to work. I'm really hoping McGregor pulls it off, but I don't know how. I don't know how he defends the takedown. Yeah, he's got the reach, but all McGregor has to do is get a hold of a single leg or something, and the power, his technique, who he's training with. I mean, McGregor's wrestling coach is nowhere near the likes of somebody like Faber, who he's just training with. He's not even the wrestling coach of that camp. He's just training with guys like Faber and Dillashaw and Benavidez and who's the other one, Castillo. These guys are all world-class wrestlers and probably could lay and prey on most of the guys outside of the top 25 at least.
Yeah.
But then what will happen? I don't see Mendes lying on top of McGregor for 25 minutes. That's just something I don't see happening. I think, if he's going to be finished, he'll get on top and start pounding him out or something. But again, this is one of these situations where MMA isn't something you can fix. And this is something that you put the best in the division against somebody with all the fame, all the popularity. I mean, I hope for the UFC's sake and the amount of money they put in McGregor that he can pull it off. But the reality is this is MMA, and lay and pray happens. Lay and pray's a thing, and it's been happening since Fitch. It's been happening since GSP, and before that, it was happening even earlier than that. I mean, you had guys. around the Ken Shamrock versus Vladimir Matsuchenko, the whole September 11th post accident thing where all the fans were celebrating the Americans, cheering them on and stuff, and the reality was every single fight ended up as a decision. And you can't predict what happens.
Was UFC 56 or something?
No, it was Tito versus Matsuchenko. I think it was Pat Militic was on the card. Jens Polvar was facing some.
UFC 32, I think. Maybe.
Yeah, there you are. That's it. You can't predict this sport, and the fame and the popularity only take you so far. Eventually, Brock Lesnar's going to get beaten by Cain Velasquez. Eventually, GSP is going to retire. Eventually, Silva's going to break his leg. These things happen, and eventually McGregor's going to have to face a wrestler.
Eventually, Ben Rothwell will be the champion of the world.
Yeah, it's a matter of time.
Yeah, Conor Chad. I think this is one of those fights. If it's a finish, I favor Conor. If it goes to a decision, I favor Chad. It's all going to come down to Conor's wrestling defense. And if he isn't able to stop the takedown, can he stand it up? Because like I sort of mentioned with Thatch versus Gunner, it's one guy in Conor who is a much better striker than Chad. Even though Chad is a great striker, Chad has awesome boxing and power in his strikes. Conor is just such a Bruce Lee type. I mean, the shit flows and the kicks, the spinning heel. He these bolo punches. He moves. Really, it's a promotion. But when he says no one moves like he moves, he's dead on the money. Chad, a more traditional fighter, an NCAA, D1 wrestler.
Conor's just the European points fighter. We've got loads of them over there. Look at Michael Page. You've got the long starts.
The MVP.
Yeah, I mean, we got them all over the place, but a few of them have been able to put it all together. And MVP, we still got questions about, and also McGregor, we still got questions about.
And Chad will be plus 170, which is ridiculous. It is insane. It's so insane that Jay is staying away from the fight because he thinks there might be some fuckery afoot. There might be something going on that we don't know about.
That's true. I can't deny it. Aldo's already pulled out, which is fuckery in itself. And next up, Mendes. Why Mendes? Why not Edgar? Will Mendes take the dive that Edgar wasn't going to?
You think Dana pulled Chad aside and said, listen, Chad, you take the dive. Your bank account's going to have a lot more zeros in it than there were before
and
you.
He tried to pull that with Edgar, but Edgar said, no, you guys tried to screw me in the first BJ Penn fight, and I didn't accept that.
Ramses would love this chat we're having back and forth. I think that does it for UFC 189 going down Saturday night. Let's really briefly talk about Sunday's fights. I don't want to spend nearly as long here as we did on 189. But let's talk about the prelims. Let's talk about the main card all in one bunch. Then we'll break down the main event. Then we'll get the hell out of here. The prelims start with one fight on Fight Pass. Bill Gates taking on Daryl Montague. And George going to Fox Sports 1, this George Sullivan guy who was, I think, Tim Means' last fight, who I just trashed over and over, is going to be fighting Dominic Waters.
Well, at least we get to see him.
Yeah, right. We have Russell Doan against Jared Sanders, and Florida boy Josh Salmon taking on Kaio Magalhaes. Salmon really has looked good in his two UFC fights, 2 second-round KO and TKO finishes against King Kevin Casey and Eddie Gordon. Another one of these guys from Tough 17 who have done really well. You got Gastelum, you got Hall, you got Salmon. I said when Salmon fought Eddie Gordon that both of these guys were going to have very fruitful UFC careers. I stand by that, even though Truck has now lost 2 in a row. Salmon, Jesus Christ. If any guy, which I'm not saying he's on the steroids, but if any guy just looks like he's roided up, Salmon has got that fucking ridiculous physique. I I don't think he is roiding just because I like him. I'm a fan of his, but Jesus Christ. We have Salmon, Miller, George Sullivan. Who are you picking here on the UFC? I guess it's the Tough 21 finale, ATT versus Black Zillions.
Salman, of course, he's a machine.
Salmon, actually an underdog against Magalhães. He's plus 125 as far as betting lines. Miller a favorite at minus 130. George Sullivan a favorite at minus 175. Daryl Montague a favorite at minus 130. And Russell Doan, the biggest favorite of the prelims, at minus 380. The second biggest favorite on the whole card.
I mean, to be honest with you, a lot of these guys are just flat out bums to me. I mean, Salman's kind of a beast, but at the end of the day, he hasn't really beaten anybody worth noting, so I'm not on as big as a hype train. I am, however, looking forward to the return of Dan Miller. Trevor Smith is, again, another one of these guys who's pretty much a nobody. I mean, I think there was one guy there's one famous guy who fought Trevor Smith, and even that fight was a bum fight whereby Trevor Smith looked like a nobody. So yeah, the only fight I'm really interested in is Dan Miller's return to middleweight.
He fought Talis Lates and lost via...
No, it was Ed Herman. It was Ed Herman.
Oh, he also lost via submission to Tim Kennedy back in Strikeforce. And whether you're talking about the Kennedy fight, the Herman fight, the Lates fight, he lost all those fights. So, we'll see how he holds in against Dan Miller, who is 3-6 in his last UFC fights. Might be getting his walking papers if he isn't able to win, but he is a slight favorite.
But you look at his losses, though. His losses are huge. Off the top of my head.
Bisping, Maia, Chael, Marquardt, Paul Harris, Meehan, all of these guys have clout.
Yeah. I mean, Trevor Smith is his ideal opponent, really. It's a no-namer who he should beat. So if he does lose that, probably does deserve to get cut. I just don't see it happening.
And we'll see. Yeah, his wins aren't really impressive either against John Salter.
Oh, he's famous for everything.
Joe Dirksen.
I think he's NFL once.
Ricardo Funch.
One Punch Funch.
One Punch Funch, as we call him.
I bet that's not even his nickname, but it sounds like it should be.
Oh, man. Let's get to the main card, which we'll break down, except for the main event, all in one block as well. We got Maximo Blanco, who has won his last two since losing his last two in the UFC. Lost to Akira Corsani, Jay's boy, and Felipe Arantes before beating Andy Ogle and Dan Hooker. He'll be taking on Mike De La Torre, who will actually be an underdog against Blanco. He's plus 125. Then we have the biggest one-sided fight of the night, according to Vegas. Former Invicta Atomweight champion Michelle Watterson, the karate hottie, in her UFC debut against Angela Magana, who's made a name for herself on Twitter, it seems like, since the women's strawweight tough. And that's about all she's done, because everyone she's faced, honestly, since has pretty much outclassed her pillar to post. We have Cesar Mutanch Fejeda, who's 1-2 in his last fight. His last three fights, was a big favorite over Sam Alvey back at that Bigfoot versus Mir card in Porto Alegre, Brazil. Sam getting the first round knockout. And Jorge Masvidal, who was also a favorite over Al Iaquinta, lost a controversial split decision against Al Iaquinta, which really shouldn't have been a split, because my least favorite person in MMA, Doug Crosby, who had a prior history with Jorge Masvidal, scored a specific round. I forget which round it was now, but it was a round Iaquinta obviously won, and two judges, the other two, both gave to Al, and Doug Crosby gave to Jorge Masvidal because he's a giant cocksucker and doesn't deserve to be in the sport. I have Masvidal winning here, and I think Vegas would agree with me. They have minus 260. And then we have the two finals for tough ATT versus the Black Zillions. Michael Graves versus Vicente Luque, and Kamaru Usman against Hader Hassan. I wish I had more to tell you about both guys, but the quality of this season of Tough has been absolutely terrible. I tried to watch the first 2 or 3 episodes. I really struggled through them because all it was is just drama, and I felt like I was watching the MTV's Real World. It was terrible. It wasn't about MMA. It was about drama and bickering and bullshit. According to Vegas, who would know more about it than me, Usman is a big favorite at -200. The other fight a little closer, with Luque being a favorite at -135. I can't really go into any more detail because I don't know much at all about any of these 4 guys. I know a lot more about the other 3 fights on the main card and obviously the main event, which we'll get to in a second. What are your thoughts on the main card, which will also be broadcast on Fox Sports 1 from the MGM Grand Garden Arena on Sunday night?
There was one moment on the Ultimate Fighter show whereby the 2 coaches were having a massive clash. I think it was about episode 5 in, and they were shouting at each other, saying, one guy was slating the other and the other guy was slating each other.
You what? You heard?
Yeah, pretty much another episode of the Kardashians and all this shit. And then it dawned on me. At that one moment, it dawned on me. What is the point of having these 2 coaches argue with each other?
Fuck this, yeah.
It's like, why? These 2 aren't fighting each other. All the other, into every single season except for season, I think it was 2, season 2 of The Ultimate Fighter, Matt Hughes versus Rich Franklin, the coaches were supposed to fight at the end of it. This one, there is no even chance they could fight. One of them would die if they tried to fight.
And say what you will about Chael Sonnen. Say what you will about John Jones. One thing that earned them both a lot of respect in my book is even though they were slated to fight when it was all over, even though they had both talked a lot of shit about the other, even though there was, all this bad blood and they were going to fight, they put their differences aside, and both men said on the first episode, this isn't going to be about us. We could make it about us, sort of like we saw with this season of Tough, sort of like we saw with Rousey versus Tate. We could make this about us, but this isn't about us. This is about the fighters. Both men put their personal issues aside and made it about their fighters. And I honestly think that's a big reason why all the fighters from Tough 17 are doing so well in the UFC, because they really got Chael and John's full attention as coaches. They weren't worried about bickering. They weren't worried about, this and that. And that was not a sentiment you saw on this season of Tough. It was like the Real World, the bickering, all that was fucking terrible, man.
Yeah, like I said, after that episode, I gave up. I mean, even Tito Ortiz versus Chuck Liddell I think it was season 11, whenever his fighter would lose, he would really, really forget about everything. He'd go in the zone and just teach the fighter what to do. And then the other seasons, probably the biggest showcase for how important it is to put the bickering aside was, of course, season 10. Rampage,
Rashad, where Rampage tore a door off the fucking wall.
7-1. The only guy who made it through was Marcus the Darkness Jones, and that was it. Every one of his guys lost. Nah, that was embarrassing. That was what an embarrassing season that was. You've got to really put your differences aside. So yeah, going back to the rest of the card anyway, going back to the Ultimate Fighter finale. Yeah, you've got Maximo Blanco. Yeah, you've got, I think you said Angela. But yeah, overall the card isn't the biggest deal. I'm just quickly going to...
Yeah.
Giorgio Masvidal. I'm wondering why he's fighting at welterweight. That kind of threw me off a bit. But yeah, he should. Even at welterweight, is he trying to pull a Benson Henderson and trying to make a name for himself?
I don't know. Maybe.
That fight is also interesting to me because he's done a really good job at lightweight, and I know that he used to fight at welterweight, but only for a very short period. I don't know why, especially after that close decision loss to Alan Quinta. People are starting to think he was in the top 10. Why would you now drop it?
Yeah, he fought at welterweight before, albeit briefly. He started at lightweight, actually was a part of the Bellator Season 1 lightweight tourney back in 2009.
What a beast.
Then he moved up. Then he lost to Paul Daly at Shark Fights. Then he moved back down. This is in 2011. And since then had really only lost to great fighters at 155. Lost to Gilbert. Lost to Habeloff. Actually fought Gil for the Strikeforce title. Habeloff, Iaquinta, and Gil were the only three guys who beat him at lightweight. I don't know if the cut was just too much for him, but he's apparently moving back up to fight Cesar Ferreira at 170.
Do we know if this is short notice?
Let me see. I don't think it is. I don't. Usually Wikipedia is really good about putting short notice fights up. I think he's been scheduled for this,
who was Gilbert Melendez?
His last fight against Al wasn't that long ago at all. It was only, 3 months ago. But
I just remember that at some stage there was supposed to be Melendez. Who's Melendez supposed to be fighting?
Melendez. Oh wait, no. Melendez was supposed to fight his last opponent, Al Iaquinta, but I don't think there was a rematch between the two.
No, okay, fair enough. It's just me mixing things up.
Yeah. Let's get to the main event. Jake Ellenberger, was looking real shaky there for a minute. Had 3 straight losses. But before you get ahead of yourself, they were to the 2 guys currently fighting for the title in Rory and Robbie, and one of the best prospects in the UFC, and Kelvin Gastelum was able to get back into the win column with a second-round finish a choke against Josh Koscheck that made Josh literally foam at the mouth, taking on Stephen Thompson, whose only career loss comes against Matt Brown at UFC 145 3 years ago. I think Jake is going to pose a lot of the problems that Matt Brown gave him as far as being a hard puncher standing up and a good wrestler. This will be Stephen Thompson's first real tough fight as far as a wrestler goes since his loss. He fought the tough Aussie Robert Whittaker, who just had an amazing KO win himself.
Clint Hester or Sam Alvey?
I think it was Clint Hester. Let me check. It was Brad Tavares.
Oh, cool.
That KO 44 seconds in earned him $50K. I'm leaning toward Jake just because we still have yet to see that well-rounded game from Stephen Thompson. More importantly, the ability to stop a wrestler from taking him down. I am going against the grain here because Thompson is a sizable favorite in Vegas, minus 220. I guess Vegas thinks, because he is a young fighter, he's had the time training with amazing trainers, Faraz Zahabi, Ray Thompson at MMA Mental. Fighting with TriStar, excellent fighters there. And he's only, I guess he's 32, but his fight age is probably much younger. He only has 11 fights under his belt compared to 40 or 39 by Jake Ellenberger, who's actually younger but has much, much more fights. Many more fights. I don't know what the correct verbiage is there. Either way, both of these guys are probably underrated, and both of them are. It's going to be a stiff test for both guys. I think both of these guys Fringe top 10, top 15. The winner gets a much better opponent at 170. The loser has to put the pieces back together after this one's all over.
What's funny is we spoke about earlier, Rory and Robbie talking about Rory saying that he wasn't hungry in the Robbie fight. Ellenberger wasn't hungry in the Rory fight. I don't know. He's just on the end of that jab. In the third round, he realised he had to do something, so took him down.
I remember the build-up to that fight. Everyone was so pumped. They're like, oh my God, Jake Ellenberger against Rory McDonald. This is going to be a barn burner. Holy shit. And it ended up being one of the worst fights of 2013. It was horrible.
I mean, Ellenberger won the last round, though. He got that takedown, but then he got jabbed in the face for 10 minutes before. I don't know, man. Ellenberger seems like his hunger's gone. 39 fights. You talk about the passion going. I think it's gone. I mean, even the win against Josh Koscheck, he couldn't beat him on the feet. And Koscheck these days, I'm pretty sure, even if you're Ellenberger, if you just pull a Tim Means and stand there, or Leonard Garcia swinging punches left and right, eventually you'll knock Koscheck out. He had to start wrestling him. The wrestling wasn't working because Koscheck's technique is still there. It wasn't a flawless win for Ellenberger.
No.
I mean, Thompson, I'm going to have to go with Thompson here. All he has to do is pull a Rory McDonald and jab him in the face, and it may throw him off from everything he wanted to do.
You think he gets the finish?
In 5 rounds? Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
His hunger will go after about 2 rounds of being punched in the face. Yeah, I just think that Thompson's too smart for this new breed Ellenberger who doesn't know what he's doing with his life. Yeah, I'd love to say Ellenberger to get on top of him and pound him out. I think it would be contested on the feet. I think Thompson's got too much of an edge. I think Thompson's too quick. His legs are going to go up in the air and he's going to kick him in the face, and Ellenberger's going to forget what to do.
Kicked in the face. We're going to try and go to UFC. I know Jay will for sure go. I might go depending how cheap I can get a ticket. I'm for sure going to try and go to Sunday's fights. And Monday we're taking a fun-ass trip to the Grand Canyon with our boy P Money, who has done the last 2 Glory events in Southern Cali, doing press for the podcast. Anything else? Fight week related, Vegas related?
Man, I hit up the Britney store earlier and got myself a t-shirt. I'm happy as hell with that. Yeah, that's about it from me, though. I've enjoyed the podcast. That's me having me on, man.
Look, there's nothing wrong if you have that kind of proclivity, but I felt like a straight-up homosexual chilling with you in the Britney Spears store. You bought a shirt. I kept looking around and laughing at things just to make sure everyone in the store knew that I wasn't actually a big Spears fan. I think when this show is over, Jay's already lacing up his shoes. We're going to make a trip to the In-N-Out on Dean Martin Drive, maybe drive up and down the strip, get a couple photos. We appreciate you tuning into the show. Shout out, shout outs all around. Ross, Ramsey's, feel better soon, man. Our boy C. Lowenstein, the Truth, Westland Eagle, AH, our boy Don Enrique, Kevin Black at Technics88, the Scottish motherfucking Fedor, MMA enthusiast. I love all of you, and I'm not even close to giving out the amount of shout-outs that deserve to be given out. But I'm fucking hungry. We're about to end the show and go get a double-double and maybe do it animal style at In-N-Out. We are in Vegas. We might do another show after the fights, but don't count on it because I'm historically terrible at doing podcasts in Vegas. This is the MMA Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at themmapodcast.com or visit we are at themmapodcast.com on Twitter. We're at the MMA Podcast, but you can visit themmapodcast.com. We love the shit out of you, and we'll be talking to you very soon. Until then, we gone.